Hi everyone, welcome to another video review. We are powering through these because I had a lot to catch up on. But today we're going to be talking about NieR Replicant. Finally, I know. It lasted so long on my channel, even though I had beaten it months before the last episode released. And I had a written review out for several weeks, maybe even a month at this point. So I'm ready to talk about it with you guys, so I hope you like it. And if you don't, let me know in the comments why. I want to know. I want to hear all the details of what you think of this game, what you think of my reviews. Agree with me, disagree with me? Did my review get you hyped to play the game? Did it make you feel like, I don't think I want to play that? I want to know all the details. Let me know, please, please, please. To keep it 100, I probably wouldn't have even played NieR Replicant if it wasn't for my friends at Dead Cell Media convincing me to play NieR Automata last year. The game came out a long time ago, but I just played it for the first time in the year 2020. And after playing NieR Automata, I was like, holy crap, this gave me such a cerebral experience and a little bit of an existential crisis. So I was like, I think I'm gonna play NieR Replicant to get the whole picture. Plus, even after being NieR Automata, I still had a lot of questions that I was hoping NieR Replicant would answer. But unfortunately, then you have to play Dragon Guard, and then you go down a rabbit hole that I'm not quite ready to go down yet. By the way, if you don't know, I do a podcast every month with Dead Cell Media where we spoil an entire game, and we did NieR Replicant most recently, so definitely check that out for my spoiler-filled thoughts, because this will be spoiler-free, as these tend to be, and definitely check out the NieR Automata one as well. I'll put a card up there so that you can check it out if you're interested. But when talking about these games, sometimes my review will make more sense if you actually played the game, which kind of defeats the purpose. So I will try my best to explain my thoughts on this game without being so confusing. But these games are very eccentric and weird, and sometimes the draw to these games is spoiler filled, so definitely check those out. I mean, check it out anyway, you know, it's a podcast that I'm on and it's fun. So NieR Replicant version 1.22474487139 is actually a remake of the original NieR game, named differently depending on the region. It's a remake of the one that came out in Japan, but really the only differences between the American version and the Japanese version is you're either playing as a brother, aka a young boy, or a father, an older dude. It's the same exact story with a different protagonist because for some reason Yoko Taro didn't think Americans would like a young boy or something, which is the complete opposite thing that Hideo Kojima did with Raiden and Snake, whatever. And honestly, most of my explanation for every criticism and every praise that I have for NieR Replicant is because Yoko Taro gonna Yoko Taro. If you don't know, he is extremely eccentric and weird. He rolls around wearing an Emil head. If you don't know who Emil is, it's when you think of NieR and you think of an icon for NieR, it's probably that. But anyway, let's just get into what I think about this game. But just know, it's weird. So if you haven't played any of the NieR games, let me explain what they are on paper. So they're typical anime, waifu, husbando, action RPGs where you spend a lot of time hacking, slashing, picking up consumable items, leveling up your weapons, and doing fetch quests for NPCs. Pretty standard, right? Except it's actually not. So you play as the unnamed boy with white hair, which I believe the community has deemed to be named NieR, but you can choose the name. He's unnamed until you name him. So whatever you want his name to be is his name. You can name him Jessica. So NieR's main goal is to help his younger sister Yona be cured from the Black Scrawl disease, which is plaguing the entire world. Along the way, he encounters enemies called Shades, which are these kind of dark creatures that attack humans. The origin of these Shades are initially unknown, but during this journey, he begins to learn more about the Black Scrawl, the origins of the Shades, what is happening to humanity, who the characters are around him, and even who he is. I immediately felt more connected to the characters in NieR Replicant than I did in NieR Automata. I think that's purposefully done though, but either way, the voice acting is done so well. The dialogue is so amazing. This game made me extremely pensive, but it also made me laugh a bunch. And every step of the way, I was constantly intrigued by what's going on with these characters that I was introduced to. So the story unfolds and answers some questions while then adding more questions, which NieR Automata did as well. And similar to NieR Automata, you'll also have to play the game multiple times to get ending A, B, C, D, and E to understand the full scope of this story. Well, actually, you'll still have to play Dragon Guard to get the full scope of the story and the world, but it doesn't matter. You'll understand what Yoko Taro wants you to understand for specifically NieR Replicant. To get all of the endings, you'll have to play the game 4 times. Maybe 5 if you don't choose to revert your save. So you'll play through Route A, Route B, Route C, and then you can go right before the ending of Route C to get ending D. You just pick a different choice, and then you'll activate Route E. But the problem is, in order to get to Route E, you need to collect every single weapon in the game, which, as a completionist, I'm used to this shit. But if you're just somebody jumping into this game to experience the game and you're not interested in doing too many side things or going out of your way to be a completionist, this is a pain in the ass, and I think it's a huge mistake for this to be a requirement for you to unlock one of the best endings in this game. If we ever get a NieR game, I really hope that they do away with this completely so that people don't have to constantly engage in repetitive gameplay or grind in order to experience the game in the way that it's intended to be experienced. Because if you just play once, just do ending A, you're really not getting the most out of the game. And the cerebral processing that your brain goes through when playing any NieR game is extremely unique to this series. It's a great ride for philosophical storytelling, but I often question if the repetitive gameplay is worth it. I feel like the combat in NieR Replicant got older much quicker than it did in NieR Automata. And part of that is because NieR Automata was created by Platinum Games, who tends to master the silky smooth hack and slash combat, which made it really satisfying to mindlessly and endlessly kill all the enemies in NieR Automata. But in NieR Replicant, while they did clean up the combat a lot from the original game, the combat is a lot more simple and it gets older much quicker. I gotta give credit to Toy Logic for cleaning up the combat so that new players like me could actually enjoy the game a lot more. Even though the combat's improved, I was still burned out after just one playthrough. Did getting all of the endings really justify the monotonous gameplay? I have to say not really. They did add an exclusive ending to NieR Replicant. Route E is new content that wasn't available in the previous NieR game, so I am glad that I waited for this version of it because it's truly a treat, especially for those who have played NieR Automata already. But ending E of NieR Replicant didn't have the same level of mindfuckery and existential exploration that NieR Automata gave me. It's not that ending E was bad, it wasn't that it was even mediocre, it just didn't have much of an impact on me personally than NieR Automata did, but I definitely enjoyed the ending a lot. I feel like it made replaying this remake worth it if you've already played the original NieR games, and it also provided a different philosophical ideology and meaning than NieR Automata. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you really loved NieR Automata, it might be worth playing this game. I still think that you'll like this game a lot. I just don't think it was as strong as NieR Automata, which makes sense because this is a remake of an older game. Before you get into the deep philosophical elements of NieR Replicant, you will have to engage in a lot of boring fetch quests. I probably would have only done maybe 5 side quests if it wasn't for me needing to get all of the weapons to unlock ending E, which is a pain in the ass because most of those side quests suck. Most of the side quests are super bleak and barely satisfying. And of course that's with purpose because this is supposed to be a bleak world, but even the good side quests, it's like, oh, okay, that person that I was helping is now dead. And I don't mind that there were a few of these side quests for some world building or so you can get to know the mechanics of the game initially, but eventually they just kind of got really annoying and got in the way, especially considering you had to do a handful of them to get ending E. So the thing is, during one playthrough, you'll have a certain number of side quests to do the first half of the game, and then once you reach a certain point, which they don't warn you by the way, you'll have to do a second set of side quests, and you'll be locked out of the first set. If you are interested in doing these, definitely make sure that you get them done before it's too late. I would say before the 4th area if you can, but it's worth noting that the first set of side quests that you get locked out of are not needed to get all weapons to then unlock ending E, so you don't really have to do any of them until the second half of the game where you unlock new side quests. But I do think the fishing quest is one of the good ones, despite being one of the longer ones and the most annoying ones. I feel like the ending is a little bit worth it, but the fishing's just not good, okay? The fishing is difficult and annoying. At first it's like, okay, you throw a lure, it's pretty simple, you move the fishing rod. But eventually it's like, oh, you have to pick up the lure after counting to 3 or after counting to 5 or let it sink in twice. And the game doesn't tell you this. I had to get this all from a guide. Like, you literally, to do the fishing quest, you need a guide to figure out not only what bait you need, which is fine, I'm okay with that, but also like when you need to pick up the fishing rod. So let's say you're going for a specific fish. You're at the specific body of water that you need to be next to. You got the bait that you need. Everything's great. But then you're like, okay, the lure needs to dip into the water and I need to quickly bring it out or else I'm gonna lose the fish. And then you wait 1 second later and all of a sudden your bait's gone or you're picking up rusted clumps instead. And you're spending all this time trying to get the timing down so that you can get this stupid fish. And then you have to do that multiple times for different fish. So it's just kind of annoying. I don't like the fishing. Far Cry 5 and Final Fantasy 15 have the best fishing in video games, so I've been a little bit spoiled. This fishing is probably one of the worst. And you need a guide for it, just like you need a guide for the weapons. You need a guide to play this game in the way that it's supposed to be played. And I hate that. They should have just put the entire fishing guide in Grimoire Weiss, and I'll explain who and what that is soon. Same issue I had with the gardening. It's not based on the game time, it's based on real time. So it'll be 12 a.m., I'm in bed, covers on, I'm all snuggly, tired, and then all of a sudden, boom, my eyes will open. Oh shit, I gotta check my garden in NieR Replicant. And I'll go and make sure that my moonflowers didn't die, or that they died enough for me to get the seeds before it wilts completely, where I just can only discard them. Yeah, it's freaking weird. Each seed that you plant, whether it's a pumpkin, a moonflower, corn, whatever the hell, they each have a different cycle of how long they can be in the garden before they die completely. But the game doesn't tell you how long. You know what tells you? A guide on the internet. Granted, the cultivation is optional, although you will need to learn it for certain side quests and for trophies especially, but the game doesn't force you to cultivate. So if you want to be woken up at like 3 a.m. realizing that you forgot to check your garden in NieR Replicant, maybe you'll like this game. Once again, a nice little section for cultivation and a nice little section for fishing in the Grimoire Weiss book would have made this a lot better. So who the hell is Grimoire Weiss? Grimoire Weiss is one of the best characters in this game, and I like to call him Weissy. He's a book that gives you access to your weapons, your items, your magic. Yoko Taro, you know, he loves genre bending. He did the same thing in NieR Automata. So you'll be hacking and slashing, but you'll also be shooting out magic with your book. In NieR Automata, it was a pod. It's weird. And just like in NieR Automata, the enemies will also have these magic balls that they'll throw at you, which makes the game feel like a combination of action RPG hack and slash with shoot 'em up elements. The main difference between NieR Automata and NieR Replicant, though, is that NieR Replicant has words that you can add to your weapons and your magic that can give you increased attack power, or increased magic power, or increased chance of dropping a rare item. In NieR Automata, there was a chip program, which worked very differently. Also in NieR Replicant, there's way less depth to the combat, and the quick menus aren't as intuitive. But there is one piece of gameplay element that is included in this genre bending that Yoko Taro loves to do that is exclusive to NieR Replicant. It's called a text adventure. You will be reading a lot in this game, especially in the Forest of Myth, where the main gameplay mechanic is to read a book, a text, and it's not Grimoire Weiss, it's just text on the screen. This does give you some background on some of the characters that you're getting to know sometimes, but other times it's just a random text adventure where you'll really need to pay attention and read over and over again to get through the book, or else you'll lose. If you played a text adventure game, you know what I'm talking about. Sometimes I felt like I was reading in this game more than I was actually playing, and that really got on my nerves. And this was more daunting because I was streaming this game, which meant I had to read out loud, which killed my vocal cords. But if I was just reading to myself, it wouldn't have been that bad. And the writing is very good. I'm not gonna sit here and say the writing's bad, but it just felt like sometimes NieR Replicant is an unpublished book that they were like, fuck it, let's just put it into a game. If you're one of those people that you don't mind reading for a long time in a game, you'll probably like this element to it, but me personally, I don't play games to read, I read books to read. I just kind of wish it was cut down a lot. I feel like some things could have been made into cutscenes, or some things could have maybe been read to me. I want to say I spent like maybe 5 or 6 hours reading in this game. That might be an underestimation. There was so much reading in this game. Most of the time I like to see all the writing that creators put into the video game, but for this game, you're forced to read. It's not an option. It's baked into the core gameplay, and it kind of got really boring after a while. But the writing's good, so I guess it's not too bad. The gameplay in NieR Replicant is just straight up boring. There's about 5 locations that branch out around the main central village, which is the main hub area, and you'll revisit these places multiple times throughout the game, just mindlessly slashing away at shades and robots. The 5 areas in this game are the Junk Heap, the Forest of Myth, Facade, Seafront, and the Lost Shrine, and you'll revisit these 5 locations several times per playthrough. And if you have to play this game 4 times, and you will revisit these places way too much. I'm not even gonna count. It's too much. You'll encounter the same enemies over and over again. It's just mindless fighting, mindless exploration. It's not entertaining. The more interesting gameplay element to NieR Replicant is actually the boss fights, which are essentially just giant shades. And what's really cool about fighting the bosses is you'll get to know their origins a lot more in Route B, making Route B feel a lot more substantial. I understand why NieR Replicant is structured this way. I understand the concept of perspective. It's the same thing that happened in NieR Automata, but I feel like so much could have been cut out without sacrificing the clarity of the core purpose of this game. I personally don't need mundane gameplay to foster an exploration of meaning. I feel like if a lot was cut out of this game, I would have still had the cerebral experience that I had when completing all endings. In fact, I probably would have been more engaged with it because by the time I got there, I was burnt out. I kept asking myself, like, Delilah, is it really worth going through this, the mundane gameplay, in order to get to these endings? To fight the same enemies over and over again? To visit the same locations over and over again? Just to get that new ending? And I kind of knew it was bad when I was tired of the music, which is one of the best soundtracks in video games, period. It's probably like in my top 10 favorite music scores of all time. Just like NieR Automata, Keiichi Okabe, the composer, is so good at what he does. The music is incredible. I would definitely pay for an expensive vinyl or go to an expensive orchestra to experience this music score. But because the gameplay is so redundant and you keep going back to the same places over and over again and keep hearing the same music over and over again, I got tired of them. Like, listening to these songs initially, I would never think that I would get tired of them because they're so good. But by my 3rd playthrough, I was sick of them that I had to mute it. Like, I had to mute excellent music because I kept having to hear it over and over again. That's insane. That's bad. Anyway, let's talk about the environments. NieR Replicant still looks very dated. There weren't as many color and texture updates as there were in remakes such as Shadow of the Colossus, but the use of color is meant to demonstrate a level of bleak, so I can't blame the game for looking so bland. Anything vibrant or detailed would have took away from the game's melancholy vibe. Do I think you should play NieR? Well, obviously my answer to this question is always, if you like this, then you should play it, but if you don't like this, then you don't play it. And I'm probably gonna do that again, because, well, things aren't so black and white, are they? And everyone's into different things, and I understand that. I'll just say, while I appreciate the updated graphics and combat smoothness to NieR Replicant's version 1.247487139 ... I don't think that any of these changes could have really done much to modify how dated and repetitive the gameplay is. The requirement to go through the same quests over and over again, the same locations, engage in mundane, mindless combat over and over again makes it really, really hard to justify a game that actually has really amazing characters and storytelling. They're so good. So if you really like NieR Automata, I think that you'll at least like this game. Maybe not love it as much as NieR Automata, but you'll still like it a lot. It definitely has some beautiful connections between the two games. They're absolutely amazing. In fact, NieR Replicant actually does some things better than NieR Automata, such as how it made me feel connected to the characters and the overall story. So play NieR Automata. If you like NieR Automata just a little bit or not at all, I don't think you're gonna like NieR Replicant at all. If you like NieR Automata a lot, or you love your NieR Automata, I think that you'll like NieR Replicant. That's what I'm gonna say. I just love the way the story is told in NieR Replicant and NieR Automata. I love the existential exploration, the philosophical ideologies. I love all that shit. The writers of the NieR series are amazing. They provide an experience to the players that is completely unique to this series. Once you finish these games, you will realize that you've never played a game that told the story in this way. It's like the writers of the NieR series looked at video games and said, what's a way that we can tell a story that only video games can tell and no other medium, movies, books, etc. And they implemented that into the NieR series, and very few developers are able to do it. I think the only other game that did such a thing in an effective way was The Last of Us Part 2. But even the NieR series and The Last of Us Part 2 have different ways of approaching their storytelling. But they both genuinely look at video games as a medium and tell a story in a way that only video games can, and I think that is genius. If you play the NieR games, you'll definitely have an experience that you've never had in a video game. It's so unique and so brilliant. I cannot deny that. But the gameplay gets repetitive and old and fast. But even that level of mundane gameplay is meant to foster an emotion, a feeling, a thought. So it's all purposeful. It's just painstaking. Even though it's supposed to be painstaking. It's a thing. Like I said, these games are very hard to explain. But yeah, gameplay very redundant. But it's supposed to be for a reason, and you'll only understand if you actually get all the endings. I just hope if we get another NieR game, we can still get that high level of storytelling, character building, and philosophical exploration, but do away with the repetition. That's it. That's all I want. Because fighting the same enemies and going to the same locations and hearing the same beautiful music over and over again was painful. These games are so eccentric that they're kind of hard to explain without spoiling things, so definitely check out my spoiler cast with Dead Cell Media for more in-depth thoughts, but once again, you should maybe play the game before listening to that. I don't know. Either way, let me know what you think of this review, what you think of NieR Replicant, what you think of NieR Automata. I also have a review on that if you want to check it out. Did I motivate you to play this game? Do you feel like maybe this is not for you? Did you play the game already and you want to share your thoughts with me? Was there anything I left out? I want to know all the details. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so much, but the most important thing is that you take care of yourselves.